Go. So we're recording now, and people will join. Usually we start at 7, so it's only in half an
Mm.
hour, half an hour from now. But it's 3:30 now in Russia.
Yeah, 3:30. Okay.
Holy shit! So
The
you,
middle of the night.
yeah, it's the middle of the night. So you found us on YouTube. You saw a video on YouTube, and you saw that we're doing weekly discussions, and you wanted to join. Um, and usually in Russia, you do a group, but it's in person, not online.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things do you talk about? Do you have weekly meetings, philosophy weekly meetings in
Yeah,
Russia?
it's not philosophy. We have just English speaking club, and basically, there most of the people who are there just need to speak English to practice their language. And but I choose some philosophical topics.
Oh, so
Not all
you're
the not all the time. Sometimes it's just, for example, this week we have charisma, and we are going to talk about it like in 10 hours, in 12 hours.
in 12
And
hours.
yeah,
I-
and on Sunday we are going to discuss poverty,
You're going to discuss what? Sorry,
poverty, or poverty. Uh, uh,
what's that?
oh man, like poor,
Uh huh.
so
Oh, okay. Poverty, you mean?
poverty.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, sorry, I didn't. I thought you were talking about power something.
No, not
So I
yeah,
was wondering
pop,
poverty. Yeah.
poverty.
So that's really cool, man. So yeah, so you're the one running the group.
Yeah, I like to study these topics.
Uh huh.
Like I usually have few topics in advance, and I try to choose something that I really want to understand. And before, like for the whole week, I basically start from questions. So I prepare questions like 10, 15 questions, which may be interesting to talk about. Then I go on the internet, find like read an article on Wikipedia, watch some videos on YouTube.
So you
Uh,
study. You study.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
exactly.
study the topic.
Yeah, maybe spend like 5, 7, 10 hours, read some quotes, and then bring it all, and we just talk for a couple of hours about it. And
Do you have questions? Do you have questions when you talk about
yeah,
these
usually
things?
it's like 10, 15 questions, but I'm trying to make it more conversational, so it's not like an interview when I ask just one question and everybody says what they think. I try to make it like as more informal as possible.
Yeah. So this is in Russia, right? Is that in
Yeah.
Moscow
Yeah,
or
no,
a
it's
different
near to
city?
Moscow, like 200 kilometers from
Okay.
Moscow,
Cool, man. And
100 miles, I
is
guess.
it mostly Russian people or
Yeah,
people from other places as well? Well,
there are few native speakers. Uh,
like
sometimes,
English native
sometimes
speakers?
they comes like there are few people. One person from America, one person from England, but they don't come regularly. But still, sometimes we have and but usually it's like most of the people it's like who study language and they just need to practice and
Mostly Russian people.
yeah.
How many people are there in the group?
Well, now like
More or less.
before the pandemic there was like 25 people.
25. So it's
Yeah,
it's actually kind of like the meetings that we do we do it in Minneapolis. And it's
but now it's just usually 10, 15.
10, 15. That's still a lot with the pandemic and everything. I mean, because things have gotten difficult. So,
Yeah, now I'm
but
working on the community. I'm trying to build community of English speaker of Kaluga. So Kaluga is like our city,
okay.
our town, and I'm trying to like organize all this stuff and uh, to invite all people to join in one group. And it's not just to have one meetings, but like kind of big community.
Yeah, people that have different groups, maybe
Uh-huh.
just try to kind of like
Yeah,
consolidate, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's important, and that's actually something that we do in Minneapolis. Um, we started out. I didn't start it out. I mean, it was some. I think it was my friend David that started it out, and there
Mm-hmm.
was something called Drunk Philosophy that I went
Mm-hmm.
to, a few times, and um, And then I thought it was a really interesting idea, but I didn't go regularly. I ended up starting my own group a little bit afterwards, and but then some of the people from that group ended up joining mine, and vice versa as well. I kept
Hmm.
going to his, especially after I started my own, and then there was a couple of other groups, but we kind of all consolidated, like what
Hmm.
you're saying, this one community, right? And then people started going to like each other's meetups, right? So yeah, I think, yeah, we were trying to do the same thing, build a community of people that want to talk about these things,
And that's
about.
really helpful in terms of, you learn way faster in a group than when you're like trying to. For example, for me, when I started studying like philosophy, psychology, I basically for 5 years I was doing it alone, and I tried to get rid of all social interactions, and it was just reading books, writing, and I was doing it like in my native language. And eventually, I got to the point where I almost couldn't talk to anybody because you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and after that, nobody can even understand what you're talking about. Just especially some like deep shit about like Kantian philosophy.
Content philosophy, yeah, then
Just
you start to get into like, yeah, like
these
some,
things in themselves, like
yeah,
a priori, some kind of appearance, essence, and just
some crazy stuff.
yeah. And sometimes like I may I may have so clear understanding of what what all this is about, but then like after some period of time, just it all I don't know disappears, and you need to gain it again and again, so to learn and to read again.
I like the
And in English, when I started studying English, I discovered that it's actually way better when you do it with people. So when you interact and share your ideas, even though it's harder, it's slower, it's definitely slower, but
yeah.
it brings some pleasure, some.
Well, I think that it's also, I mean, it's good for a number of reasons, right? I mean, it's good because, well, first of all, because you learned English, you said you started studying it 5 years ago, right?
2016.
Did you speak any English before that?
No. Well, I tried to study it, but I wasn't serious about it. In
S-
2016, I discovered Speaking Club actually in our city.
Wow. So it's
Yeah,
2016.
yeah, like 5 years.
That's
But I'm
5 years.
thinking
That's
since
nothing.
since 2017, since May 2017, when I started running this club,
Yeah.
I'm thinking in English basically all the time.
Wow, but
So
that's
just shifted my
really
my
fast learning, especially because you're learning in Russia, where you don't live in an English
yeah,
speaking country.
yeah.
So
But
that's
I
really
do lots
impressive.
of yeah, I do lots of work like writing a daily one page a day. Self-talk, like self-talk was one of the most, I guess, most one of the best exercise which I used, which helped me to improve my speaking skills and like to learn language. Basically, just record videos on camera, talking for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, no, I mean that's really cool. I mean, I live here in the United States. I've lived here for a number of years. I mean, my wife is American, but I'm actually from Europe. I'm from
Uh-huh.
Portugal, and
Uh-huh.
Portuguese is my native language.
Uh-huh.
But I learned English when I was a kid. But I really like learning languages. I learned after English. I learned Spanish,
Uh-huh.
and
Spanish and Portuguese, I guess they're very, very similar.
it's
And
the closest language to Portuguese. But it was also because I had family in Spain. I had some family in Spain, and I decided to go to Spain to study, to go to university because I didn't want to stay in Lisbon. So and it was a language that I thought that I could learn, right? So having family, and if you can learn English that fast, I should definitely be able to learn Spanish. So I did, and it was actually I discovered then because English I had started learning English when I was a kid, so it's not the same thing. But I discovered that with Spanish that I really like learning languages as an adult, and
you, what language do you use when you think? Like, is it English?
Well, I live in the United States, so I have to think in English.
Mhm.
Well, not that I have to, but and my wife is American. We speak English at home, so
Yeah, I've noticed that when I think in English all the time, it certainly has an effect on my native language. So when I speak to people, when I use Russian, sometimes I may just
really, they
may
notice.
sound weird.
Really, that's crazy.
Even though I was studying like Russian, I basically was studying literature and writing,
Yeah.
and I guess like I improved my Russian to not to like to the level which is kind of people usually don't get so far in terms of studying language. And I was like writing for 5 years every day,
Wow, in Russian.
training and training. Yeah, and still after like few years of thinking in English, my abilities, my skills, my writing skills, they was just getting worse and worse.
Well, it's I think it's normal, like because you're so immersed in something like English in this case, Like for me, definitely, I mean, my Portuguese suffered, with
Hmm.
learning other languages, living in other countries. I mean, for sure.
Yeah, when I
Um,
discovered this method, like thinking in a foreign language all the time, I was, wow, I might just do it once a year, just pick up a new language, learn to think, and then like learn 5, 10, 15 languages every
I'm I
each
I
one.
I'm at five right now because I'm Portuguese, English, Spanish. Then I learned Italian,
Mhm.
and French.
Yeah, well, you
S
can't go in depth, right? So if you learn 5 languages to keep them all on
It's
a
very difficult. Yeah, it's very
on the high
difficult.
level, you need to use them all the time, and
True. Yeah, and it's very difficult. I've been trying like recently because for a while, for several years now, I wasn't really actively trying to keep up my languages except for Spanish
mhm,
because I was working with Spanish because I taught some Spanish at school at a school, and I also I used to work as an interpreter. So in hospitals, I used to work with English speakers and Spanish speakers, and
mhm.
translate. So I was
Do
actively
conversations simultaneously,
sorry.
like uh, to translate simultaneously in a
Yeah,
conversation. You can.
simultaneously, or actually with hospital stuff and
Uh-huh.
legal stuff. It's usually not simultaneous. That's usually more like United Nations stuff. Like what usually you do, because simultaneous is very flawed. It's very difficult to be accurate. So what you do
Uh-huh.
is the person speaks and then you speak,
Uh-huh.
and then the other person listens. First you speak, then I speak, and they understand, and
So you
then
have time to just translate to say
yeah,
something. Yeah.
basically the technique is you speak like for 30 seconds, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I translate those 30 seconds,
Uh-huh.
and then you go again if you have more to say, and so on.
Yeah.
you know so because simultaneous is actually not good for people to understand. It works like if you're in a booth or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But basically, yeah, like real time, and it's difficult. I mean, it's a difficult job. Like you need some practice.
Yeah, I
um
understand. I guess it's very hard. Just
it's not super easy, especially because I used to work at hospitals,
uh-huh.
like with lawyers, education. So especially with hospitals, you got to be very careful what you're saying,
Uh-huh.
right? Because you don't want to translate wrong.
Yeah.
So it's not just about kind of translating or interpreting. That's the actual word, but you want to do it accurately, right? You want to do it as accurately as possible. So I was keeping up the Spanish, but yeah, French, Italian, I just kind of let it go. Um, but yeah, I mean, but now I'm really interested in learning other languages like German. I want to learn German, and someday I would like to learn Russian and Japanese. But German I think would be my next one. Like like I always do the easy ones, right? Because I did Portuguese, English, and then
Like the same
Spanish,
family, the same language family.
French, Italian. Yeah, basically I did all the Romance languages plus English, which is like a fake Romance language because the vocabulary is Romance pretty much. So but now I want to do German, and I studied a little bit of German before, so that's also cheating because I have a base in German. I'm very bad at it, but
Yeah,
I have something to start with.
yeah,
Like Russian, I would have to start from zero.
yeah. I'm now developing the course how to like study language, and I use German just to demonstrate that like I have some techniques, and one of the technique is called attention control. So basically, you don't learn the language, you learn yourself, and you use language as a tool. And what do I mean by saying learning yourself? You basically just learn your behavior, your daily habits, and you learn to use the language to control your attention. For example, in German, uh, here's the question: "Wo bin ich?" So you just study, like you use this question, and you ask this question like 10, 15, 20, 50 times a day. So you wake up and "Wo bin ich?" Ich bin in meinem Zimmer.
There's a friend of mine joining us,
Uh-huh.
so the meeting is gonna start building. But yeah, he's real cool. We can I'll introduce you to him
Yeah. Okay.
as soon as he gets the audio and the sound working. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So you do speak some German as well,
No, I don't speak German. It's just
just the technique and
yeah, just to
okay.
demonstrate. And like you learn all these places. So basically, first you need to understand that there are like 20, 30 places where you find yourself in every day. And when you change the location, you just ask the same question, and then you learn like how to answer this question. And you don't need to memorize anything. Just write down the names, and you repeat it like few days, and you already know like all these places. And then you start asking questions like, "What am I doing?"
Oh,
And
that's really cool, man.
yeah, in
Uh,
every place there's different activities. You just basically learn all your activities. Like gradually, you just build your vocabulary, not on conversations, but on real things which you use every day. So you learn to focus your attention and describe what's going on, and then gradually, like find more and more motivation.
Craig, you gotta unmute yourself if you want. If you want, I don't know if you know you're muted,
Yeah, I know all about that.
but in any case, this is
Oh,
Vladimir and this is Craig.
How do you do?
yeah, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Very good.
Vladimir found us on YouTube,
Ah, all right.
and he's calling from Russia, and Russia is like 4 a.m.
Yeah, I imagine.
So it's pretty cool. We're expanding. We're global domination.
Good. Well, pinky in the brain. Here we go.
Yeah. So
Multicultural conversation.
yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I think so. This is like this is what we're talking about before, like how the internet. I think even before we start recording, that the internet is kind of because Vladimir is trying to avoid like social media stuff. You know, like it's not so good for your life.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. No, I think it's really smart. The things that sorry, my microphone, I messed it up. Oh, shit, I messed it up. Okay, I'm back. So because there's like this little button that I can't touch. But basically, yeah. So the social media does have the like an advantage, like YouTube. The cool thing that I like about this YouTube thing is that first of all, we can record it. You know, it's like we can have conversations and then go back to the conversations if we want to, and other people can watch the conversations. And also the fact that we can build a community that is global. You know, it doesn't need, I mean, it's cool to have a community that is in person, but it's also cool to have a community that is global, I think. So there are advantages and disadvantages to this
And
technology
downside is,
thing.
I guess, like it becomes so addictive that you just
Mhm.
use it more than necessary, and just makes you kind of a slave. Or
It makes you a slave to it for sure. I mean, I would say there's more than one disadvantage. I mean, just watching that, I don't know, have you seen, I don't know if you have Netflix in Russia. I imagine you do, but
yeah, we have, but I watch some TV shows, but I don't use Netflix. Just
well, there's one thing on Netflix that I'm sure you're gonna like. It's called The Social Dilemma, and it's a documentary about the effects of social media on people.
mhm.
That one is really good. It's a really good documentary, and they interview basically a lot of the like the insiders, the people that work at the social media company, like higher ups and stuff like that. It's a fascinating documentary. So you understand that there's a lot of it that it's
Yeah,
messing people up.
I'll probably watch it because I'm really interested in all these social interactions, social networks, technologies.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
So you'll have to pardon me. I'm not very talkative tonight. I've had kind of a brutal week and am fairly exhausted. So I don't know if I'll be sticking around too long, but I wanted to say hello.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm sorry you're not feeling so well, but thanks for coming and saying hello.
Yeah, sure. You're quite welcome.
Yeah. Um, but are you feeling okay physically, or like is it?
I'm okay. That's not the problem, but I'm not going to go into that while we're recording on YouTube.
Of
So
course, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. But cool background, by the way.
Ah, yes, Perseverance.
Is that like a Martian probe or something
It
like
is.
that? I'm
Yep,
not.
the one that landed
Curiosity.
earlier
Yeah. Is it
in the
curious?
week.
Oh, awesome. Who sent it? Was it SpaceX?
No, this is NASA,
NASA?
Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yeah, I watched the Elon Musk interview. I don't know if he had a couple interviews with Joe Rogan because I had seen the first one. I just watched the second one as well. I don't know. I think that he might have gone on Joe Rogan again recently. I'm not really sure.
No
Um,
idea.
yeah, but that was an interesting conversation, the one I watched, and the thing. I mean, Elon Musk is a pretty weird guy, but he has
Oh, hang on, my phone is going.
one of the things that I thought really interesting is that they talk about just he has this perspective of the galaxy, like how he was talking about how he was saying how we could colonize the galaxy, like that's a feasible thing, that in the future we'll just we'll go to planets like Mars, we'll start building colonies, and this can happen in a relatively short span of time, maybe 100 years, 200 years. We can start colonizing the galaxy, or we can colonize the whole galaxy, and that is a really interesting idea, and that we could actually become the human civilization could become a multi-planetary civilization. If you look at it that way, this is kind of just the beginning. This is the period in which we're just on Earth.
Yeah, I guess discovery of Mars is going to be like discovery of America.
Exactly, something like that. Yeah, this is
this is
like this is sort of like European civilization before the 1500s.
Yeah.
Before Columbus and Pedro Alves Cabral, and all the Vasco da Gama, the explorers, that reveal all these different different continents. And we're doing the same thing now, with Mars,
I think
and these different planets.
We'll probably first become cyborgs and only after that go to the Mars, because it's very hard to imagine how all
Okay,
this
I'm back.
is going to be actually achieved, because Mars is like how far off is it from Earth? Like
It's
depends on-
doable. I think it's doable. The way he was speaking, I think it's doable, but I don't know. I would have to do some more research. I'm gonna. You're inspiring me, Vladimir, to do more research, because Craig, Vladimir is telling me what he does. He has a conversation group, so every week he chooses a topic.
Right, I saw your list. It looked very interesting.
It was a very interesting list, and he researches the topic throughout the week, so he learns about it. So I think that's a really cool idea.
It's a good model.
Yeah, it's a good model.
Hello.
And this
Hey,
is
we have Vladimir from with the Philosophy Channel from Russia. Good to meet you.
we do, man. This is definitely, we're going global. And this is Michael.
Oh. So what's the topic? What are we discussing?
We're so we're actually just talking about that right now before you joined, but because Vladimir has this model that they discuss one specific topic every week, and he does some research throughout the week about that topic. So maybe that's something that we should adopt. But as it stands, I don't have a specific topic today. Right now, I have some different topics that I would like to throw at you guys, but also open to topics that you would like to discuss.
What are others things you thought of?
Well, I was just thinking. I was actually having a conversation with a friend, and this is actually very recently. And he didn't know about you, Vladimir. He didn't know about that you were going to join us tonight. But actually, it was a coincidence because because that made me think about Russia, like the conversation that I was having with him. Like, because he was telling me about Putin and all that, and then we're talking about Russia, if it's a real democracy or not. And I don't know how, like, if you want to, talk about those things, Vladimir. Anyways, I guess the underlying question that I thought was particularly interesting was the democracy versus autocracy, divide in the world, and also a similar question or a related question, like how important is it for people to live in a democratic system? Like how valuable is that to people? Is it a lot better than for people to live in an autocracy? Because what we're talking about with my friend is that we're not Russian, for example, in that case, but we also discuss a couple other countries. But when you listen to some Russian people speak about this, they're not used to democracy, right? And Russia is like theoretically a democracy, but it's not really, and it never has been truly a democracy. But how important is it for people to live that? Like, is democracy kind of a given? Like, do you need democracy to have a good life? Do you need democracy to have a good society? Or is this just like a biased view coming from a democratic system? Maybe autocracy is just fine.
I'm actually personally, I'm not so interested in politics, and I try to avoid watching news and all this because you never know what's really going on. They may tell you one thing, and actually it may be something completely different. So if you want to learn it, you have to pay attention and just spend all your time.
Yeah, American news is not much better. So
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid. I prefer to read books and understand better, like the development of, like when we talk about Russia, I was reading a lot about 19th century, and before communists came, before communist revolution, and the life which were in 19th century, it was like all our writers like Solzhenitsyn, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Turgenev, they basically describe it. It was way worse than what happened after communist period. But now, I think it's kind of for me personally, I don't have any restrictions. So when we talk about democracy, yeah, I don't vote. I don't choose. Like I'm not interested in that. But in my personal perception, I may do basically whatever I want, and I don't think we even have, like, there are some problems with people who like say something politically incorrect. They may be sent in prison, and probably they may have some difficulties. But in my case, like I don't think that whatever I say, like I'm not trying to argue with. Oh, it's very hard to explain. Like I think we live in democracy in Russia, but it's kind of, you know, it's not democracy that you have in America, but it's still some sort of democracy, because people actually, like, if you know what you're doing and if you want to achieve certain results, you basically may do whatever you do in America. So you, like, authority, it's like you may find a way to get what you want if you understand what you're doing. And people, like, there are lots of myths about politics and about authoritarian, like Vladimir Putin, for example. He's presented as a guy who like controls everything, and you can't say anything against him. But in reality, there are lots of people who say whatever they want to say about Putin and like politics, and nobody pays attention. Like people, I don't even think that what's going on in Russia, it's really well, it's very hard to talk.
No, I mean, I think it's interesting, and it's interesting because I was having this conversation with an Indian friend of mine. So,
Mhm.
you know, we also talked about India a little bit, you know, but
On a personal level, I feel as if I actually have like the same rights as you have in America. So I might do whatever I want, and government actually doesn't hold me back. I may just it's more on personal level, like not on social level.
yeah, and David is joining us as well.
So
So David, yeah, today we have Vladimir as well. You know, he's joining from Russia. It's like 4 o'clock, you know, 4 in the morning in Russia. So this is like hardcore commitment right here. Um, and David actually found us on YouTube as well. David was the first one that found us on YouTube and joined, but he's from is it North Carolina or South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina, so a little bit closer to where we are. But yeah, I mean, this YouTube thing works kind of. It's cool to start building this bigger community. It's like sort of like The Walking Dead, you know, they're like just in Atlanta in the beginning, and they start like getting all these people from all over.
That's an interesting comparison.
It's a very stupid comparison, but you know. I don't know if you guys watched The Walking Dead.
I did for many years, but gave it up recently.
Well, it became kind of unwatchable, so I don't blame you. I had to give it up. I had to give up after a while. After 10 seasons, I think I had to give up.
After they got rid of Rick, I think that was probably the ending for me.
That's
Anyway.
when I stopped watching as well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there, I guess. So.
Yeah.
How you doing, David?
I'm good. I'm good. You know, with The Walking Dead, the first time, this is just me. I'm only speaking for myself.
You can only do that. Speak for yourself. It's fine.
But the first time that I saw a dead person get up and walk around, I knew that was a premise that I couldn't swallow.
Well, how come? Was it just like too fantastical?
Well,
You've just eliminated half of American cinema and television.
If I hear hoofbeats out on my street, my first thought is not uniforms. My first thought is somebody's horse or a cow got out or something, you know.
So you like more concrete stuff, not the fantasy superhero and zombies and all that stuff.
Nah.
I like a tiny bit of magic, like in Game of Thrones. Like there's not like tons of magic everywhere, but there's like little bits of it here and there. I think that's good.
Yeah, just still pretty much reality based, but not too out there, right?
Yeah.
And being an old school Dungeons and Dragons player, I can handle my magic just fine in any dose, and it is what it is.
Well, I think it's all right if, you know how people have often said seeing is believing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that technology is doing for us is that now we have some people who think seeing is believing. And now we have some, believing is seeing, different.
Well,
Bruno, is that the baby in the background?
it is. Sorry about that.
All right.
All right. So
Like, it's good.
yeah. Yeah, maybe let's before we delve more, if we end up doing that later on the democracy conversation, democracy versus autocracy and all that, maybe kind of a different approach, because this is the other thing that I wanted to talk about today. Maybe you guys will shut me down, but I've been reading this book, Walden, and I think we talked about it a little bit last week.
Mhm.
But I think it raises some really interesting questions about the way we live, you know. So, like in particular, so I don't know if you all know about Walden, but basically it's Henry David Thoreau. You know, he was living in the 19th century. So Vladimir, you're talking about the
I've read him.
Yeah,
I've
you're-
read Walden, but in Russian translation.
yeah. So the
5 years ago.
it's sort of like your Russian writers that you're talking about, describing people's lives in the 19th century.
Leo Tolstoy was influenced by him very much, and he mentioned him.
Oh, really?
I guess it's how I discovered him. I was reading Leo Tolstoy, and he said something about this guy, and
Man,
I
you're
decided to.
a well-read guy, man, if you're reading Leo Tolstoy. But yeah, so he was describing the lives of people in the 19th century, and basically he goes to this place, you know, this nature place. You know, Walden was a pond, you know, like a lake, and he goes there and he builds his little cabin, and he he does his own agriculture, he gets his own food, produces his own food, and he lives this alternative life, you know, where he just goes to nature, you know, and he builds his own cabin, he produces his own food. Most of the time he's not working because he doesn't need to work. He spends relatively short period of time actually producing stuff. Most of his time is spent, you know, contemplating nature and contemplating life and studying and writing. You know, he wrote the book while he was living there.
And what was his time period? Emerson.
19th century, yeah, 19th century Massachusetts. And now, if you ask me the exact years, I think it
Well,
was sort of.
I can, look it up, but yeah.
I think it was sort of in the middle of the 19th century, if I'm not mistaken. This was more or less, he talks a lot about the Mexican-American War and slavery. So, well, it can't be too far out into the century. I mean, it can't be towards the end, because at that point, slavery had been abolished, and the Mexican-American War, I think, happened.
And he was influenced also by Emerson. Like
He was good friends with Emerson, actually. They were very good friends. So
Lou Dietz, who believed that technology is something bad, and shouldn't develop all this. People are losing their works, and
well, reading this book, I mean, this is one of the questions that we can start with. Maybe.
Well, I just looked it up. Thoreau died in 1862.
Okay.
So the Civil War was still going on.
Yeah,
when
so
he
maybe
died.
1840, something like that.
Yeah.
So, because he died when he was relatively young, so maybe even 1850.
1854 is when the book was published.
Yeah, there you go. So the wonders of the internet, we can know everything. But yeah, I mean, one of the things, well, two things that we can talk about just to start with. One of them is like what you're saying, Vladimir, like the technology, right? I mean, there is something, even then, I mean, something special about not being consumed by technology. And these days we're half cyborg, right? I mean, because we walk around with phones and computers, we're always checking stuff, always connected to the grid. And I don't know, like yeah, there's a lot of good that comes from that. There's also a lot of bad, and at some point we probably need to figure out how to live this new life that we have ahead of us. Another thing is like, uh, is this lifestyle that we have now? Because Thoreau is convinced that most men, and there's a beautiful quote by him right at the beginning of the book. He says, most men, I hope I don't fuck it up, but most men live lives of quiet desperation, something like that. So he believed that most people live bad lives. He said we have all these possibilities here, but most people are really slaves to their work and the bills that they have to pay. Their existence is oppressing to them, and yet, that's the life that they choose to live. And he wanted to live, something away from that. He wanted to live a different kind of life in a different kind of society. So those are the questions that come to mind, reading this.
Well, tell us, does the book support that point of view? In other words, is Thoreau selling that his point of view of the lens through which he views the world?
Well,
through the book?
he's not trying to he's not an evangelist. I mean, he's not trying to convert people to something. He's just pointing out that this is his way of seeing the world and life, and this is how he wants to live, and I mean, there's other issues, as well. Like, he didn't really want to pay taxes because he thought the U.S. government was immoral for a number of reasons. But that's kind of like also a separate question on top of the ones that I've already raised. So many different questions.
I think a good place to start is societies that have tried to emulate that, or that have tried to do that. So, I mean, you see, like, for example, the Amish community nowadays, they're not super highly technological, right? They live a more basic lifestyle. They, it's more about like working with nature and all that stuff. So some people are like very much in favor of that, like a more primitive lifestyle. But then like other times it's looked down upon. Like I read a book called like Educated. Have any of you read that book, Educated by Tara Westover? So like sometimes a very primitive lifestyle is viewed favorably. Sometimes it's viewed unfavorably. And then there's certain like there was a period in American history where they try to come up with a lot of these like utopian communities that were kind of based on similar principles, but they didn't last very long for various reasons. So yeah, I think a good place to start. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I don't know if any of you have heard about it, any of these kind of communities.
I'm vaguely familiar with it. Yeah.
There were communities exactly before Thoreau. There were communities in France. And
Vladimir, I can just barely hear you. It looks like you have a really good microphone. Maybe your volume or your cable.
Well, it's at the maximum level. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just try to speak loud. As loud as possible.
I've got a volume control on this end too. Just nobody else talk.
It's the old-fashioned way, It's like,
is it better now?
Just try to speak as loud as you can, as if you were making a speech,
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there were lots of these movements, and I guess they started from Thomas More, this book Utopia, basically in 15th century, and then French, when French Revolution came, this movement like Fourier. I don't know, are you familiar with this guy Fourier? Charles Fourier. He actually wanted to build in France communities, and he used this idea like phalansters. I don't know how to translate it, but anyway, so he just suggested that all science were doing nothing before, and he created kind of political science. And later, Marx was also influenced by his ideas. And there was people in England like Owen, and also like this whole movement was kind of, it wasn't just in one country. Like people were trying to build new lifestyle and to live like according to their own principles, and yeah, just trying to stay away from government, from politics. But all, as you mentioned, all these projects, they just failed because people, like, it's easy when you have just a small group of people, like 100, maybe 1,000 people. But as soon as it grows bigger, there are always some contradictions, and it's very hard to sustain. So all these like kind of thought up communities, thought up ideas, they actually work on a very small scale. But as soon as it grows up, it's very harder. But this guy's Fourier, I was reading, I was influenced. He developed very strong criticism against modern culture, and it was like the beginning of 18th century. And his writings is like, I think, thorough. He was very savvy in writing, and Fourier, this Charles Fourier, he was like kind of similar to in style to this guy. And there, like, probably was influenced by each other philosophy. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you raise a good point that these communities tend to work when they're smaller, not so much when they're bigger. And yeah, I mean, there's logistical reasons why it is like that, right? I mean, it's a lot easier for one person to go and do that than obviously when 1,000
also,
people
like,
start doing that.
but yeah, when you go in forest and build a cabin and live it like probably with your family or with a small group of people, it's possible to do. But when you talk about society, about huge community, I guess it's like it's not enough. You can't just make up certain rules and live according to them. You have to, like, it's society is, I guess, it goes through the same evolutionary process as species and all other forms of biological forms. I guess society is also kind of like life form which evolves and it has its own laws and
Yeah, for sure. And but I think that you can still use some of those ideas in different ways, right? You can use them in different ways. The idea that, like, the core idea is that you can live in ways that you are not consumed by this obsession of just basically work to buy stuff, like it comes down to that, right? He was basically trying to live a life in which he didn't have to work all the time to buy a bunch of stuff. He said, I'm gonna go to a place where I'm gonna have few possessions, but I'm gonna have my time and my freedom.
it's like minimalism, like
Yeah, exactly, like minimalism. Yeah.
But you have to admit, there is a trade-off, which is like healthcare, I guess. Like if he ends up getting a disease or something out of nature, you wouldn't have anywhere to go to unless he decides to go back in the city. But I feel like the problems that humanity has gone through haven't disappeared. They've just sort of changed over time. So it used to be like we lived out in nature, and we could get hurt by animals, we could get hurt by disease, we could get hurt by all sorts of different kinds of things in nature. Then we started to live in houses and work in factories, and then it sort of changed into, we're working in the factory all the time, and we could get injured in a factory. Now it's kind of like we're working on the computer all day, and now it's like our brains are like, we have information overload nowadays. So I feel like the kinds of problems that we face just keep changing and sort of one gets substituted for another. Yeah.
We also are changing. So those people who were there like 200 years ago, we are slightly different from who they were. And technologies, they just make us like different people, and we adapt to modern circumstances, modern environment. So as environment changes, we are changing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I heard this thing once. So Bruno, I know you watched The Social Dilemma, but
Yeah.
one of the points they made is that so we still have a couple people left on Earth that existed before, you know, TVs. I'm not sure about TVs, but we have a lot of people that existed before computers. I think there's people that have existed before TVs were out, right, Craig? Cars and all that. So we still have some people
I'm
alive.
just glad you asked Craig first.
I'm sorry.
I
Well-
raised my hand, so
That's
You
kind
raised
of
his hand.
that's kind of rude, Michael.
No, I saw him. I couldn't tell if he was raising his hand because you know how like the background sort of like tries to filter it out. But that's all right.
I think he
Yeah, I
was
don't-
raising his
strictly
hand.
speaking, actually predate computers in the sense that they made them, you know, for the Second World War and things like that for code breaking. But as computers as we know them today, I certainly predate and watched and participated in their development. So
Like Craig knows what it's like to be without it and with it. But soon we might reach a point where no one knows what it's like to live without it. And I
yeah,
wonder
if
what the
anybody needs to
implications-
learn how to use a slide rule, hey, I can probably teach them how to do that. So,
But yeah, I wonder what the implications are of reaching an age where no one knows what it's like to experience the alternative because everyone has only experienced that.
That's a good point. That's a good question. Yeah. But I think that raises like some serious problems. That raises some serious problems. But I think we didn't hear you, David.
No, that's all right. Go ahead. I was interrupting. Sorry.
No, it's cool, man. No, go ahead, David.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I don't want to interrupt.
It's okay. It's not like I was gonna say something enlightening, you know. It's fine.
Well, now I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
Okay. Well, but yeah, I kind of forgot what I was gonna say as well. But like I think we need to. It's not so much about like the interesting conversation is not so much about are we going to accept technology or are we going to deny technology? Are we going to accept like modern society? Are we going to reject modern society? Because yeah, I mean that's a conversation that perhaps one man can have, but not not a lot of people. In any case, like like what Vladimir was saying, yeah, it's true. Like but I think the real value about thinking about these things is that even if you are not going to go into the woods and build your cabin and grow your own food, I think there is still it's crucial to think about everything that we're gaining and everything that we're losing as society progresses in this way. And to assess things from a distance, assess things also from a philosophical bent. Like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a free man, a free individual, like someone who's going to take fulfillment in his life? These questions are important.
Bruno, I submit the question, what is it to be a human being, is a question that's going to become increasingly a big deal in the coming decades. Because here's the thing with technology, right? We're talking about basically the second derivative, and that is the increase of the rate of change of technology to the point where even if we wanted to be like Thoreau and live the simple life now, there is no way in hell that we could put the brakes on the thing that we have unleashed upon the world and ourselves, and I don't know whether or not we should or whether we want to, but I don't think we could if we decided that we wanted to.
I used to have some
It may already be too late. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I used to have some experiments to not use the internet for a couple of weeks, just to turn it off and read books and think and try to get as less information as possible. And I've noticed that it's very, first of all, it's very addictive, but on a personal level, it's actually possible. So if you really want to get rid of the internet and live without it, it may work, but it takes maybe a couple of weeks. It's like kind of detoxification. So first you need to understand that like what it gives you, like the internet technology. If you may maintain your life without it, if you may do something, it's not actually necessary because people were living without these technologies for thousands of years, and they still could find, like before the internet, there were TV. Before TV, there was radio. Before radio, there was newspapers, books, and people always had something to do. And now it's like we get more. It gets more and more exciting. Like all these technologies, basically, like you have this phone, and you don't need even to think about anything. Like before, people were bored. They started like thinking, doing something, and they could find something to do. But now, as soon as you're bored, you just take your phone, you find some information, it makes you excited. And some people even, it's hard for them even to think. They don't know how to think, how to be alone for a certain period of time, which you need if you want to, if you want to think. And technologies, they make you think less and less. So, and especially the internet, all these opportunities which you have. But on the other side, of course, they help you to improve your everything basically. You may learn to just any language. You may learn everything. All information is available, and that's why it makes it so tempting to use the internet all the time. I think it's like on a personal level, everybody has to decide for themselves, like whether or not you need to use technologies or you need to stay away. But certainly, you have to know both points. So it's not just everybody must use the internet, must use media, and or everybody must just go to the forest and live.
Vladimir, actually, you know what? I have an excellent example of what you just said.
Mhm.
When I moved into this new place where I live now, I bought an apartment this year in January,
Mhm.
and I moved in. I think it was January. Yeah, January, not so long ago, middle of January, I believe. And for 3 or 4 days, I had no internet. Well, even more than that, really. But let's say 3 days with zero internet. Then I figured out how to do like a hotspot thing, and so I was kind of cheating. But in the beginning, I was using no internet for like 3 days, I think, 3 or 4 days. And I gotta say, man, my life was different. It was really different. I went back a decade or two, and yeah, you relearn stuff, and obviously you can't do some things, but you relearn stuff, and it's a different way of communicating with the world and with yourself. You start to think a lot more because you can hear your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Like these days, it's very difficult to hear your own thoughts because you have lots of input, feedback all the time. Like you said, you can't spend like 1 minute without anything because you just look at your phone and you look at something, you feel bored.
I actually don't have a phone, and
Well,
Really?
I don't buy it on purpose. I have phone like
there's a value in that.
this.
Oh man.
Yeah, the old school. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like for the longest time, I didn't want to get a smartphone. Like I got a smartphone, I think like 3 years ago or something like that. And people looked at me like as if I was poor or very weird. I
Yeah.
don't know, like it was a weird thing already. Um, but the smartphone changes things. It turns you into a different person. And I don't read a lot of books. In those 3 or 4 days, I read a whole book, maybe even like a book and a half.
Hmm.
So, and I rediscover like the value of books almost, like you start reading, like if you have the internet, who reads these days, like not a lot of people. Well, Craig there, but Craig, look at him, he's Socrates in the modern world, like you're a wise man.
That's because I read books.
That's because you read books.
Reading books is an excellent gateway to wisdom.
It is true. It is true. And we're losing that a little bit.
But you don't have to give up technology to read books.
Exactly. No, all mine are electronic now. I only buy real books if I have no alternative these days.
If I
It
go-
certainly helps though.
My
It
whole
certainly
library
helps.
with me.
Yep. No, I have close to 15,000 volumes in my Calibri library, and
That's
yeah, and obviously they're all electronic.
Well, the problem with the electronics is that there are lots of competing things to books, like if you really want to read books, yeah, you can read books, but it's very hard. Like you're giving the choice. You can watch movies, you can watch TV shows, you can watch like anime, you can play video games, you can watch YouTube, you can go on Facebook, and the list goes on. You can, like, if you're young enough, you go on TikTok and you watch stupid videos all day long. Man, once I checked out TikTok, and I ended up spending 2 hours looking at people doing like these really, really stupid videos, and I felt very stupid afterwards. There are so many competing possibilities with technology that I mean, books become, at that point, they become like a hard conscious choice.
So I want to mention something. So first of all, from an evolutionary perspective, when we used to live out in the woods, we didn't get like super new information that frequently. So when it did happen, it was super important, and like we wanted to know about it, right away or whatever, because it was very rare that something like hugely new would come about. But nowadays that pace is so much greater, and I feel like we're not totally wired to be able to handle that. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. And then also, depending on your job, you may have to sort of be plugged into technology quite frequently. So not everyone, like if you're a farmer, probably not. Construction worker, maybe not as much. But more jobs nowadays, it's kind of your role to sort of be plugged in. Like you got to monitor your emails. You got to constantly be watching different files or different websites. That's my job personally, but that makes it kind of tricky. So, yeah. But then again, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I mean, previously, more people worked in factories, so maybe then it would be more physical injury, whereas nowadays it's more like mental focus or whatever. Yeah.
And do you think one's better than the other?
I don't know. I have no answer to that question. But yeah. I'm sorry, Bruno, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I think Carolyn joined us. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
I don't know, Michael. I kind of forgot. I don't know.
Sorry.
I forgot what the specific point was. But oh yeah, so I was gonna say, like what you said about the emails. Yeah, that's another thing that I think is very stressful. And I mean, again, this is like part of life, right? But so it's not like that you're for it or you're against it, but it's just it's like the fact that we're always connected now, and that we feel an obligation to be connected, or even like you're saying, like for a lot of people, if they have a certain job, you got to be connected. That's part of your job, but it's an extremely stressful thing to have to be connected all the time with your phone, with your email, with your Facebook and your Instagram. The more social media things they make, the more stressful it's going to get, right? And it's like that. I'm sure that takes a toll on people. I feel like
Well-
it takes a toll on me. I mean, I'm sure it takes a toll on people.
To some extent, doing anything on the internet these days, it is like going from a very rural community to downtown Las Vegas, just like that. That's a shock to the mental system. We've
You may
heard
see-
people
you may
say
see-
the shock to the system. This
you
is
may
a
sit in
shock
a
to the
vi-
mental system.
You
Oh,
may
what
sit
did you
in a-
say,
in a
Vladimir?
village. You may sit in a village and just, as you said, go just in Las Vegas, just everywhere. Like, and, like the notion of space and geography, it's kind of, it's very different from what it was before the internet. So basically, I see it like in my small town, and I may communicate with anybody around the world, and it gives me lots of opportunities, and I may use these opportunities. And if I don't, I may have this kind of back thought and say, like, I have all these opportunities. Why don't I use them? And it's hard to resist, like when you have sense of what it is and how it works. It's very hard to resist, even if you see some pathological, like you may start using it too much. For example, I used to play video games very much, and for me it was kind of problem, and I tried to fight with this addiction, and I tried to like I tried to avoid using internet, not because it was like basically because whenever I got there, after 20-30 minutes, I feel this desire to play video games, and it forced me to shut off the internet completely for weeks and sometimes even for months. But then when I learned to control this desire to stay away from just video games, it immediately made all this like I found different ways how I may spend my time on the internet, and it's like this is really like different from, well, I don't know. I get
No,
what
I understand what you're saying.
yeah, but this opportunity that you may go like everywhere just in one click, and you may go everywhere, and basically all you need to do is just learn how to communicate with people, how to find what you really need and how to get it.
But yeah, I think that kind of goes back to sort of what I was saying about evolution, which is that we're not wired to be able to handle these amounts of information. Like it used to be kind of like, let's say you lived in the woods, and then once a year you'd see like a solar eclipse. So then you'd look in the sky and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
and then that would be like the whole conversation of the day would be that everyone saw that eclipse, right? But nowadays you could see 50 eclipses on YouTube. You could see eclipse A, eclipse B, so we're not wired to be able to handle that
And
level of information.
And at least we have some people that understand why they happen and how it works,
Yeah.
and can share that with us.
So yeah, we've been able to advance scientifically and technologically more because of it. But yeah, as for whether it's worth the trade-off, very hard to say. I would say it's worth the trade-off, but it's still very hard to, I mean, that's just like a gut instinct. I don't even know how you go about answering that question.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a valid point that we have a certain for lack of a better term, I guess hardware, like we have certain capacities that are in our genes, our biology, our brain. We have, limited capacity uh, of processing things, and that's a good point, that perhaps there's just, in some cases, just way too much for us to actually process it and have a normal brain function, because we're just not built for that.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, the question is like, what's the right level? Like, is it just an inevitable trade-off that we just have to live with, that, we have better medicine, better healthcare, we're less prone to disease, although we did have COVID, but we're better on that end. But then the trade-off is that, yeah, we're just kind of always plugged in, and our mind is overloaded. I don't know.
Oh, Frank
Well,
is
let-
Frank is
let-
going to
let-
join us.
Let me see if I can, if I were to, I have to think some more before I try to put it into words. Sorry.
Well, you raise an interesting point, Michael, since David still needs to think about his. So you raise a valid point. Like, is this a good trade-off, or is it worth it, right? I think that's an interesting thing to think about. It's an interesting question that we can try to solve if it's worth it or not.
At one point, we're not acclimated to water, and I don't know, somewhere the first few hundred people that tried to get something under the water figured out right away that it wasn't good for you to be under it and try to breathe in, and that water was different from air. And so the first few hundred people that tried that learned it until somebody figured out how to hold their breath. But you know what? Today we understand what water is, and we take craft to the bottom of the ocean so that we can see with our senses what's down there and learn more about it. So if we had felt the same way about water as what you're saying about what we should at least consider for today, which I agree, but I'm still sharing this point of view. If people felt then like we do now, whose shoulders would we stand on?
So in this case, water is technology. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So we just haven't understood very well the effects of it yet on our minds. But once we can get a handle around that and have a better understanding of what the long-term effects of technology is on our brains, then we might be able to harness it in a better way, kind of. A more informed way.
So Frank,
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out if the trade-off is worth it between the amount, the possibilities that we gain by modern life and all the things that we need to forego or that we have to endure. So that's just so we have an idea. Do you have any thoughts on that since you just joined us? Nice whiskey.
Jim Beam bourbon.
You came prepared, my man. That's good.
I don't know. I guess just like all value statements that we make in this chat, when someone says, "Is it worth it? Is it not worth it?" I'd say, "I don't know. Is it worth it to you?" Or I point to the person. It's like, okay, who is it worth it to? I definitely see worth out of technology. I mean, And to quote Voltaire, as he said to Rousseau, it's very nice that you think it's great that we should go back to walking on all fours, but I prefer walking on 2 feet. So I don't know. I kind of take the same stance, I guess.
Yeah, and like Frank said, I think it could very well vary from person to person. Like some people, technology might be too overwhelming for them, so maybe they would have been better off living 100 years ago. But others, maybe it doesn't bother them as much, so they would be better. Yeah, I wonder if it's actually like could be very person dependent, and that makes things interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe some people are just too stimulated by things, like for example, I don't deal particularly well with modern life, like the amount of choice that exists, and how connected you are to these things, how absorbing they are. I really think like what you're saying, Michael, when you say like the brain is not formed to deal with those challenges or those situations, I think, yeah, maybe my brain is not prepared for that. I feel that is quite a valid hypothesis. Perhaps some other people adapt to that better. And I don't know if that's going to translate into evolution somehow, that those people whose brains are more, more capable of processing the crazy amount of information and the crazy amount of choice that we have today, maybe those people will do better in evolution.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, yeah, evolution, it used to be physical fitness, right? It was also like physical fitness and then also intelligence to some extent, right? But maybe there's like a new kind of evolution where it'll be about like processing tons and tons of information. So not necessarily like having like intelligent ideas, but just being able to process lots and
How
lots of
much
stuff.
Or
information?
have some mastery and interconnected with the machines to help us do that.
How much information you can process, how fast, and how powerful are your filters, right?
Yeah.
Like
now evolution takes a very long time, so I think before that actually happens, we might come up with some new technology that we might figure it all out before we get to that point in evolution. But just hypothetically, it's interesting. Yeah.
Just so that you guys have some concept of how quickly machine intelligence is advancing. Are you familiar with AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero?
Yep, I am at least.
Do you know what the at least for the lay statistics are about that? Is that AlphaGo was taught how to play Go, and thousands of masters games were given to it to study. And AlphaGo Zero was told nothing but the rules of the game. That's it. And learned by playing itself. AlphaGo, the first generation, beat the world champion. What, 4 games out of 5, Michael, or 9 games out of 10, something like that?
It only lost 1. I know that. Yeah.
And AlphaGo Zero, another computer mind, defeated AlphaGo 9 times out of 10. Is that right?
I think it was like even more than that.
It was 100 out of 100. That's what it was.
I watched few games, and Alpha Zero was very creative, and chess players, they just learned how to play. Like it showed many different strategies which people couldn't see before. And
That's correct.
The level of creativity, it was just mind-boggling.
Yeah. So that was chess, and I'm a big chess fan, so I've watched a ton of Alpha Zero games. But David is talking about Go, and what's interesting is at first they tried to sort of give the engine a head start by training it on the games of the professional players, right? They thought that would give it a head start, so it wouldn't have to learn totally from scratch, right?
So they were giving the computer a mathematical equation that would give them the capability of each move. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, like, at first they took the computer and they showed it the games of the professional human players to help train it, to help it learn.
Well,
But then they found out that that was actually slowing it down, that it learned better totally on its own than it did by starting out with the best human games. So we're slowing it down. We have nothing to teach it, basically.
train's already left the station.
Yeah. But it's just,
It's
How
scary,
in the future,
interesting too, you know.
are we going to become a kind of, the artificial intelligence may just take over humanity, and like I guess it's one of the concerns of Elon Musk, that he thinks that if artificial intelligence become smarter, and if it develops its own will, it basically may destroy all humanity, because what's like, if it decide that humanity somehow isn't necessary, it'll just not destroy, but maybe just make humanity kind of like what we do with animals. Artificial intelligence is going to do with us.
Well, just as an example, a computer communicates between transistors and so forth at the speed of light. The best we can do is a nerve impulse, which is 100 and something, maybe 200,000 miles an hour. Nowhere near the speed of light. And what that's a comparison between the speed at which a nerve impulse can work and that of electricity flowing down a conductor is so significant that in a week, a group of 7 people brains could do the equivalent of 20,000 years of human achievement. That's astonishing.
So I've kept my mouth shut for a long time because my attention is kind of divided right now. But a couple of things have come to mind. One of them is back in the 1940s, when the great mathematician John von Neumann was writing his originally major book on game theory, along with Oscar Morgenstern, they asked him about these kind of games. And they asked him about, you were talking about games, you mean games like chess, right? And von Neumann's response was, no, chess is a well-defined form of computation. No, I'm talking about games that involve strategy. And he used poker as his example, and much of game theory has been developed using poker as a model. Going up to the current run of AIs, I, for one, was never surprised to see chess fall as quickly as it did. I was a little surprised to see Go fall as quickly as it did, but there is an AI that has now competed in world championship level poker games, and that's a whole different classification of game than either chess or Go, which are kind of combinatorial in nature. And poker has as much psychological understanding required for poker as it does the probabilistic stuff, and what are the odds of these hands turning up. So that's something that I find extraordinarily impressive. And now in AlphaZero, the latest iterations of AlphaZero have mastered at least three or four different games from scratch. And that's another interesting problem, because in AI, everything you know, you could do machine learning will specialize and it will learn one thing extremely well. But then when you want to teach it something else, you have to erase everything that it's already learned and start over from scratch. AlphaZero is now figuring out how to teach itself how to learn to play games just by having basically just by simulating them and see what works and what doesn't. And that's where the whole speed of light working, you know, at the speed of transistors comes in there. The other final thing that I say, and it'll probably be before I sign off for the evening because I am just dead exhausted, is that recently a new supercomputer opened up. I believe it's in the US that has a number of connections between its transistors comparable to the number of synapses in a brain. That is that enormous number of synapses that we have in our brains that a computer is finally being able to run with that number of connections. Now, of course, the rub with that is with electronics is that the heat given off by that much circuitry is just more than enormous. And of course, the power consumed in the process of generating that heat is more than enormous. And that's the real miracle of our brains, is that they can do what they do with so little energy consumption and so little heat generation. It's just astounding. But in that sense, computers are finally getting to the point where they may well be able to compete with brains in terms of capabilities, because a lot of it is that number of network connections basically that you make within your head. And I'll shut up now and probably head out very shortly here for the evening.
Thank you, Craig.
Fine.
Yeah, thanks for that, Craig. That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, all the games like Go, chess, I mean, those still, like, there's only a limited number of moves you can make on each turn, right? So even with poker, so I mean, poker, you can, there's like probably more options than chess or Go, but it's still, you can wrap your mind around it. But like, I guess the thing with real life situations, the number of possibilities is in the, you know, hundreds of thousands or millions. Like what could I do right now? I could go to Taco Bell. I could, I don't know, go buy a new computer. So it's like, I think it'll be a while before like AI can handle situations where there's like almost an infinite number of possibilities. Eventually, I think maybe they'll get to it, but right now it's still very structured games, I guess.
There's problems with consciousness also. So AI, for example, it may probably compute all these you know, probabilities, but it doesn't have consciousness, and how to make it conscious is the biggest problem which people are trying to solve.
Oh, but we
nowadays.
don't want to make it conscious.
What, we don't?
Well, no. I mean, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Well, it's probably going to make itself like conscious.
I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, but I want to add something about poker. I used to play poker for a couple of years. 10 years ago, I was kind of professional poker player. I played
Wow.
at poker. I played at Poker Star, and I used to play 12 tables. So you play simultaneously 12 games. And at
Wow.
the best times, I used to play 16. And there were some bots at that time. It was 2010, 2011, and the site banned these bots all the time because people, like clever people, figure out how to put a bot, and you may train it, and bot will just make you money. Well, you just put it there and it just makes you money. But these programs were detected by another bot, and I used to like play with bots, and then I was then I found out that these, like, it wasn't real players, it was just bots, and these bots played like 50 tables. So you just go. I played 16 tables, but there were bots which played 15 tables all the time, just not non-stop. There's like small stakes,
So,
but
so then could you, uh, for every deck that was being dealt out
Mhm.
of for these 50 tables, did you remember each one of them and what the likelihood? Did you have a assessment, even an analog one of what was likely to come up next?
well, basically, it's like first you learn to play like 4 tables, and it's kind of skill. You develop it, and you do it all decisions. You do it all automatically. So you basically you see cards, and I didn't think. So it's just okay. If these cards in this station I do this, in this station I do that, and gradually you just improve the amount of tables like 4, 8, 12, 16, and it's kind of it's like driving a car. So at first you are conscious and you're like doing all these moves and you need to pay attention to everything, but then it becomes automatic, and yeah, I was playing basically like a robot. I would say.
So,
Have
yeah.
you I've played bots before, never in poker, but I've played them ran into them on just online like video games, playing a video game online. And I've run into a bot, and the thing was I was always able to kind of tell that was a bot because you're like, oh, this is too perfect. This is just like it didn't matter the game, it could have been a fighting game or
Yeah, the same. The
shooter,
same.
where the point where you sit there and you go like these choices that they're making are instantaneous and perfect reactions to the point that humans don't do this. This isn't human like action. Uh it just feels off, completely off about what you're observing when you compare it to all your interactions with other humans. And it's at that moment where you go, oh, this is bogus. This is something else. Something else is going on here. Um, but yeah,
Modern artificial intelligence, all these networks, they are AlphaZero, for example. It's like a human, so you
mhm.
can't you can't say that it doesn't make predictable moves. It just it's you can say that it's not a human. So in old games, it's kind of it's easy to identify the bot, but
Mhm.
if we are talking about modern technologies, it's almost impossible. So it's even more clever than a human.
Well, yeah, I think Frank is just talking about like reaction time. So I think like in a game like I don't know, StarCraft or something, like you could tell it's a computer because it reacts right away to what you do.
Yeah,
Whereas
but
like with AlphaZero, with chess,
yeah, there was.
um,
Can I interrupt?
yeah, yeah.
There was a game in 2017. Dota.
Mhm.
It's like famous game Dota, and there was OpenAI. It was a program which they created. It's also artificial intelligence, and it played with champions of Dota. And it's not it's like I don't know how to say. It's a game in real time. It doesn't. It's not like step after step. And the bot beat the real the champion of Dota. It just beat it was so like fascinating to watch how both like it was playing faster, but still it's like it was like human, but super fast human. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's not just chess and Go. They created these programs which could play virtually any game. And again, it trained as Craig said, it trains itself just by playing with itself. So it's like doesn't need to have experience of playing with other people. It I- it's I find it kind of similar to studying languages. I started studying English, and basically for first like for several years, I didn't communicate with people at all. I just was thinking and trying to do self-talk. So basically, just I used this. Like, I studied from machines how to learn language. So they just play with themselves. What do I need to do? I need just to talk to myself and learn how to explain everything, what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, how to just describe what's going on. And it's much faster in terms of studying, because with people it's harder to talk, it's harder to express your idea, and you always feel kind of, you know, embarrassment, or when you speak a different language, when you can't express yourself clearly, it's always hard. But when you talk to yourself, it's just easier. And you may make mistakes, but then you learn gradually, do it better and better, and eventually you get to the level where you may like feel natural using a foreign language, any foreign language.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of the way that these AIs learn. So it's like they kind of use trial and error in a very similar way that humans do. Like they'll test out one strategy and they'll try it in a bunch of scenarios, and like sometimes they'll fail, sometimes they'll succeed. They actually learn from their success. That's why it's called machine learning. Then that becomes
We
yeah.
have infinite time, so we don't have so much time. I guess if we have just one human and train him to play chess for million years, he'll probably reach the same level. But humans they're distracted all the time, and you can't focus on one thing. But these machines, you just give them one task, and it basically trains yourself uninterruptedly. And at some point, it gets to the level where nobody was before, since it just gets through infinite amount of time. Imagine that you may read books like for 10,000 years, just uninterruptedly reading all books, and you just will understand everything. And with machines, it's like it reads 1,000 books just in one day or in few days. Like if we compare it with the way how we process the information.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to go from here, but yeah, just I guess just filling Natasha. We were originally talking about like technology and kind of how it's sort of overwhelming, and there's just so much information we have to take it nowadays. And is it worth the, or is the benefits worth the cost? That was originally our conversation.
Worth the lifestyle cost?
Yeah, worth the lifestyle cost. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I do.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what's already been said. But I kind of, this is very current, and it's very kind of, I think, a really heated topic, is the amount of information that people are expected to ingest, and then somehow make decisions about, and decide whether it comes to things that are emotionally charged, like how much can you be expected to care about such an array of things. And I think honestly, like, it's like we have to start being a little bit more, I mean, I hate to use it, but mature about how we treat the information that we put inside of ourselves. Because I think there really is too much that we're supposed to be passionate about things in order to keep moving forward and having ambitions. But at the same time, like, I'm kind of alluding to like all of the causes that there are, all of the things, all of the abandoned dogs, but also hurricanes, but also war, but also, all of these things that now we are being informed about, that have always really been happening, but now we know. And it's too much, in my opinion. I think it's really too much. And so I think we would probably do well if we want to evolve as a society, having some education on how to select or self-filter the things that we can be passionate about, so that we can have a sense of fulfillment. We can devote ourselves to a select number of causes that we have time for, and that we have the emotional capacity for, rather than feeling like there's so much that I'm supposed to care about, and therefore I can't choose. It's like having a menu that's too big. You have to look at all the ingredients, you have to look at all the titles, you have to look at all the marketing. Here, this one's bold and red, and this one's got a star by it, and
No,
they
you
try to
don't.
help you. And you have to come up with your own filtering system, and that's probably something that we're going to have to end up educating ourselves and our children on in a really mindful way moving forward, because there's not really any way to go back unless you want the government to choose that information for you, which I don't think most of us want. I don't think most of us want. At the very least, Americans, I don't think we want the government choosing that information for us. But that means we have to figure out some kind of other system that we implement for ourselves and for our kids, because throwing us into the pool is a great way to drown. So that's my initial vomit response.
And I was kind of mentioning earlier, so I don't know also what you think about this, but I feel like then like for example, for a lot of jobs, it's kind of like you have to be wired, right? Like you have to catch up with your emails, you have to check out this website every day, you have to look at what are the latest numbers or whatever. So a lot of times the only way to avoid it is to like choose, like, I don't know, certain careers. You know, there's certainly like a farmer wouldn't have to deal with that as much.
You'd be surprised.
You
They
don't
have
know
to-
modern farming if that's
Well,
what
exactly.
you think.
If you're a
You have
modern
to
farmer, yeah.
keep up to date on software updates for smart thing, like for certain industries, and equipment that has to be computer monitored, and you have to keep up to date with like the codes, and you have to keep up to date with the news and the weather and new practices and policies. Like, it's not what it used. Nothing is what it used to be.
I agree.
Two of the major IoT customers of the place that I work for are John Deere and Caterpillar. So yeah, there you go.
So yeah, I guess the question is, how do we bake in the cost of the complexity of the systems we're using? Because I feel like it's often like even in whether it's in schools, whether it's with jobs, government, often will throw in complexity and we'll be like, oh, it doesn't hurt, you know, it just makes the system better. But we don't see the cost. That it's hard to quantify the cost of the added complexity in a system.
I don't think we've matured enough, to be honest, like as a society, to really start taking responsibility for what we throw at our civilians. What we trust everybody to just kind of make their own rules, and I think that's setting a lot of people up for failure, because there's a lot of equipment out there that is geared specifically for farming attention and manipulation, and people are not equipped to counter that internally. They don't have the emotional skills, they don't have the psychological skills to navigate that, and they've never been taught it. It's never really been something they had to be taught. And so I think I don't think we have the tool set yet. I think that's gonna take some big brains and some big voices to start really addressing how we can create a functional way of dealing with the amount of information out there. I don't know what that's going to end up looking like, if it's going to ever actually end up looking like anything. I have a feeling it won't. I don't know if we can ever, I don't know if we can get that organized as a society for at least another generation, personally. But I mean,
I think it will be the generation that comes immediately after all of the nightmares you just described.
right? Yeah, yeah, they'll we'll all drown. Our kids will have it, they'll just be learning it from
To a certain,
age 4, and it'll be part of their experience, and it won't even have to be taught, maybe.
to a certain extent, perhaps the bad things, but all of the good things
Mm,
of the last 100 years have come about because we were able to explore things and learn new things. And we have never been able to stop that. We're not likely to stop it now. And so what is commonly called artificial intelligence is people are sometimes scared of it because robot overlords taking over the earth. They're not going to suddenly become evil, but it's going to happen. And if people that we trust to do it don't work on it, then people like Mao Zedong and Hitler might. Just my 2 cents.
Craig?
I'm just raising my hand a second to say it is have a good night, and it was good to see and talk to y'all, and perhaps I will be seeing you next week. I gotta go get some sleep, so it's been a long, ugly week for me, and a few of you know why. So anyway, I appreciate it if that didn't go out over the public recording or anything, Bruno, though.
Of course.
If you get that, yeah, okay, good.
Whatever you wanna say, you can say yourself, but
No, I've said what I need to say in
Yeah,
private to whom
of
I need to
course.
say it in private to, and I'm good with that.
Your business is your business, Craig. But I appreciate that you came.
Yeah,
And you
well,
talked to us a little bit.
as you said, taking one's mind off of things is sometimes a real smart thing to do. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to have had the opportunity. And anyway, you guys have a good night, and I will hopefully see you next week.
Have a good night and get some rest,
All right.
Craig.
Thank
you.
Craig.
Yep, bye-bye.
But yeah, I feel like nowadays we're kind of in a phase where we sort of keep adding more complexity to a system, and often we justify it by saying, well, if we add that to the system, there will be a positive financial, positive economic, positive technological benefit. But I wonder if eventually we'll start to reach a point where we're better at assessing the cost of extra complexity. So yeah, I feel like that'll be like a key moment where we really have a way of doing that.
I think what you're saying is a very important point to consider. But beyond that, at some point, how the intelligence, the reactions with the world is enhanced, it's not up to what we put in it.
Yeah,
It's
no,
up
at
to
some
what
point it's
it
going to be
puts in
so
itself.
complex that at some point, yeah, the AI will just do everything itself. But yeah, until then,
Knee of the curve.
yeah.
I mean, as a race, we've kind of always been innovation first, and then like clean up our mistakes later. And like, I mean, if you look at like the Industrial Revolution, and the coal mining, then the radioactive material, and like all the times we've been like, this is a great idea, it's going to change everything, and we go full force into it, and we like make some safety measures, and then a ton of people fail and die, and then we're like, oh,
Mm.
And then we take like the decades to figure out a plan to
Oh.
to ease off of that. Oh, that wasn't such a good idea to use lead for pigmenting in
Yeah.
like everything. So it's
That's
mean,
actually a really cool story if you ever read up on it about the
I have
discovery.
not.
of
Please
lead.
tell, Frank.
Oh, I'm not going to say the whole thing right now.
Are you gonna go back? You gotta go back to
Just get me out.
Vitruvius?
Just had some whiskey.
Do you remember this Leonardo da Vinci painting of the Vitruvian Man, the guy with 4 arms
Mhm.
and 4 legs? I
Hmm.
always wondered, was there some guy named Vitruvia? You know, I didn't.
Probably.
So I looked it up, and there was this guy named Vitruvius. He was a Roman. He was
That he had a crush on?
no, he was an
May
architect.
though.
He was an architect, and he wrote 10 books on architecture. And they were just little tiny things, but they survived to even today. And so I decided, well, if Leonardo da Vinci liked this guy, I ought to read one of his little pamphlets. They're, not that big. So I read one. And he was an architect in ancient Rome, and he was talking about plumbing going into the houses. And he said, those people that make those pipes down at the lead foundry, don't use them. Don't use that stuff in your supply lines. So he knew 200 BC.
Oh my gosh.
Well, something like that, something between 200 and BC.
Jesus.
But it was definitely BC. He knew then that lead was bad for you. And we didn't outlaw it in the United States until the mid 1970s.
Jesus.
That's
But
terrible.
yeah, going back to the point. So
Wow.
like
That's
people.
rough.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I was just saying that's rough. That's
Yeah.
shameful.
But like people in factories used to work in like really bad hazardous conditions, and then they created new laws saying that you can't make your workers work in these really bad conditions. You have to have certain safety measures. You can't make them lift more than a certain amount, I think. So they totally changed the regulatory environment in terms of working in factory. Now I wonder if there's going to become a time where we make regulations around technological jobs and the amount of like information you're taking in. Like if you just spend all day like monitoring this, and you switch to this screen, monitoring this, and you switch to this screen, and you're just doing that all day. I wonder if
I'm not doing that.
like I wonder if that'll be the next level of government regulation. Will be
let some machine intelligence
to.
do that work.
They have to get better at enforcing their current regulations first. Like, I don't know if any of you guys watched Last Week Tonight, but they did a thing on the meat butchering industry, and oh my gosh, I had no idea that factories where they disassemble meat products were
more animals are killed every year.
A new regulation doesn't do anything if you don't have the staff to actually enforce it.
More animals are killed every year to feed human beings than all of the human beings that have ever lived.
I totally believe that.
That's huge.
So the primary question for this entire discussion is technology better for us, or does it alienate us? Is that my understanding
Frank
correct?
fell in the first rabbit hole.
No, it's not. I mean, we didn't really have like one specific question. I mean, the conversation kind of like led us here.
That's a good question, Frank.
Okay.
I mean, I think yes. Oh, what? Go ahead.
I was just going to say he was talking about Walden because he read Walden Pond recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that fucking book.
Well, okay. Well, you can tell us why, but like, yeah,
keep going.
No, I mean, no. So I guess
the hang up on Frank button.
What?
I said, where is the hang up on Frank button?
I guess this segment of the conversation, yeah, start with Walden, but I guess the question that I raised was, so if how to put it? How did I put it?
Acceptance of technology.
Well, no, I didn't ask specifically about technology. That was kind of like what we've been
Okay.
discussing more
Specifically
recently.
about
But I mean,
computers.
yeah, well, that was even before that. But no, just modern life. So I guess we're just discussing how to assess like what is being a human, what is being a person in modern life, and if if we need to reassess, or if either as a group or individually, if we need to reassess our priorities or what we're doing in life, so that was basically, that was the idea behind Walden, right? He was saying, well, all these people, all of society, a lot of it is just really people misinterpreting their possibilities in life, and he was describing the life. He said that lives of people, the lives of most men were just most men led lives of quiet desperation. I think that's how he put it, and I feel that's true for people today. I mean, I don't look even like in advanced countries, rich countries, like a country like the United States, I don't feel people are particularly happy. Most people are not particularly happy with their lives. I mean, life in the United States is, I mean, it's pretty, it's not a great life. Most people don't live a good life. Now, is it possible for people to live better lives, or is it just or is it just the case that the most people are always going to have bad lives, and a relatively small part of the population is going to have the possibility to lead great lives? Here, it seems that Natasha's leading a pretty good life there. So
My veggie patty
yeah, there you go.
is complete.
Look, I think we all need servants. We can just make the machines our servants.
Whoa, what the fuck?
No, that's exactly.
I've got a rare visitor on my lap too.
That's exactly what we need. That's why aristocrats led great lives, because they had a bunch of servants. People that did their
Right.
stuff.
Well, I was gonna say that
I'm
you
gonna leave
make a
now.
good point. Like maybe Americans aren't
I'm
happy,
just teasing you.
aren't as happy as perhaps people have been in the past. But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think one of the things that technology has done is provide more opportunity for I think globalization is a plus, and I'll say why. I think being exposed to the perspectives and troubles across the world, while it might make us less happy because it exposes more of the pettiness and the flaws that humans are capable of, I think acknowledgement is the first step in rehabilitation. Being made aware of how we have gotten by for our whole lives with like tribalism and racism and slavery and all those kinds of things that people have gotten by and created, albeit like happy lives for themselves. But that came at a cost, and I think we're being exposed to the cost a lot more vividly than ever before. And I think technology is the only reason we're being forced to look at it in its face, and that causes misery. And I think it's a necessary growing pain for humanity as a species to be. I think so. I mean, I think so. Like there are lots of ways to be happy by creating coping mechanisms that keep you blind to what's going on around you. But I don't think that's the best way. I don't think that's the best evolutionary tactic.
So if we are to achieve happiness via disregard of a set of data that is made available, the happiness is not in our best interests. Is that what you're saying?
Basically. Well,
I
not
agree.
only disregarding certain data, disregarding other parts of our species. I mean, if anything, sacrificing swaths of our own species.
Oh.
If it were just any data, we're already facing that climate change. I mean, that we wouldn't all know about unless we had technology and news and research and equipment and all that kind of stuff. We wouldn't know that we are sacrificing the very place that supplies us with everything that we need if we didn't have technology. So it's not even just species, it's also environment. I think technology is necessary for us to not exterminate ourselves.
Well, if technology is not necessary or not, I think that's kind of, we can ask that, but there's no real point in asking it because it's going to happen anyway. Like, there's no way technology is going to go away. It's just,
There's some people
that's
who
not a possibility.
vehemently believe in deconstructing the society that's been built and isolating themselves and other people and going back to certain time periods that they glorify. And they believe in it very strongly.
Well, but those are just freaks, like you're talking about.
I think it's a loner
I
people.
call it cherry picking fallacy.
Well, you're talking about people that are like very extreme in their views. Like I think that you as a person, like you individually, you can make certain choices. Yeah, well, you or no,
you as in the
individual,
theoretical
like
you.
the individual. Yes,
Okay.
one person can make a choice for a person or even for a family, because of young people can't make their own choices, like children, infants. But you can make your own choice for yourself or for your infants about the use of technology. As a society, we have that's not a choice. We don't if you're extreme enough and you can get a group of people going, yeah, you can go live in the middle of nowhere and have no technology. But that's, in any case, that's an anecdote, right? Society at large,
How are we defining technology here?
just anything that is not like that you do with your hands, basically.
Mhm. So okay, but before I get to that,
Phones, computers, televisions, whatever you need electricity.
Equipment, internet.
Because technology, as I understand it, is pretty
I'm
much
not talking about fire.
okay, not fire, but
Yeah.
still, it's pretty much almost the application of any instrumentation for practical purposes. via-
electronic screens. We could say electronic screens.
Electronic
Yeah.
screens. That's how doctors talk about it and psychologists. Screen
Just
time.
for,
It's all going to be about screen time.
Mirror.
just for a little insight. When something comes apart, blows apart, if it doubles its size every so many microseconds, how long before you call that an explosion? A fire is an explosion. A fire doubles ever so many microseconds. Computer power doubles every 18 months.
Mm.
Just think about how far computers have come just while you've been alive.
Mm.
And this is just the beginning, really, because the computers were created in the 1950s. So really, we can't really see ahead of us because that's just the nature of things. But we're pretty, in the history of humanity, we're probably in the beginning or halfway through. So there's so much that is gonna. That's why, like, when we start thinking about technology, like computers and stuff, this is really not even like, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. we have understood some things, we have seen some things, but we have like thousands of years probably of technological development ahead of us, and we're going to have to deal with that, right? So this is really just how many years have we had computers? Like 50, 70, nothing, we're probably going to be looking at 12,000 years, of computers,
I don't think it's realistic to assume that computer technology will continue to advance at the same
Yeah, it won't.
rate.
Not at the same rate,
Because
yeah.
there's a lot of limiting factors. There's investment, there's interest, there's like the equipment to actually make the computers themselves, because at some point, you're going to make a computer that could actually stretch the limits of manufacturing capability. Like when computers first came out, you were only able to make connections at so small of a thickness, and then you were limited by the metal itself to make the connections between the different processors. And I think we're going to reach that limit of production capabilities, manufacturing capabilities first, and then there'll be a bit of a stall until we can get past that bridge where we can enter into a new era of like nanotechnology and stuff like that, where things can get that increment smaller, where we're rather, where you're moving the decimal down. And I think, because you can't be, you're going to end up where you can have a computer so big, maybe your investors are willing to have one that's the size of a building, and maybe they're not. And so I don't think it's realistic to expect it to keep going on at an exponential rate or anything like that. Because if you look, case in point, like TVs, 4K, and now they're going to 8K. But at some point, humans aren't going to notice the difference because it's going to outpace our brain. So we're not going to get the payoff of something that's just faster. Just because you can make it faster doesn't mean it's worth it. So I think there's going to be, we're going to start out very soon. We're going to start outpacing our ability to perceive the difference. And then there's going to be a change in investing styles. And that will perhaps create a different type of technology, maybe. And it won't be just computers. It's going to be more maybe aesthetic. Maybe it's going to be more sentient. Maybe it's going to be more tactile. Who knows? But I don't think it's something that you can just you'll just be able to measure on a single linear path.
No, it's impossible. It's just because we just invented them. But if you look at 1,000 years from now, it's even hard to imagine what things are going to look like 1,000 years from now in terms of, like, these computers that we have now are probably going to be, I don't even know. Like they're gonna be like basically the bow and arrow to their semi-automatic weapons. So we probably can't even imagine what computers are going to be able to do.
But case in point, like Back to the Future, everybody thought the trajectory of technology was on a pace where we would definitely easily be living in space by 2000 or whatnot, and we did not get there. Certainly we've experienced an increase in speed and technology, but it's not like the pace and what to expect is actually really tough, and it might take longer to get there than we think.
Yeah, but we're gonna get somewhere. I don't know where there is. It's really just gonna be gradual. If we're looking at the history of mankind of the future, it's very hard to predict. But like when we look at the transformations that we've seen in the last couple of centuries alone,
I think we all understand differently where we are right now. So if we actually try to figure out, like we're trying to figure out where we can get, but actually, I guess even the more interesting question will be where we are right now, because every one of us has a different picture, different understanding of what's going on and what are the technologies, and everybody uses it in a different way. So at first, we need to figure out where we are right now before to think about the future. And
Yeah,
I think,
definitely.
I think, I think, I think that no, from kind of philosophical perspective, we may look at it like, I guess, kind of metaphysical perspective. At first, we had kind of absolute sleep, or dream, whatever you may call it, and then there was kind of this world, reality, which we had, like we live 8 hours, we live in a dream, and 16 hours now we live in a kind of in a real world, and we may think that now we live like 5 6 hours, we live actually in virtual world. So whenever we look at the display, we live in this world, like in the world of information, and now it gets more and more, so we just dive into it, and I guess at some point we'll lose this connection with reality, as we lost the connection with dreams. So people usually don't take seriously what's going on in a dream. Very few people can actually pay attention what's going on in a dream. Nobody understands what is a dream, what's the purpose. And the same may happen with the reality. So we'll live in kind of virtual world, and what's going on like in this world is going to be kind of the second stage of dream. We have like 4 stages now, and this is going to be the 5th stage of dream, and we're all going to live in kind of virtual world. I don't know how to put it in a better words, but kind of perspective.
I mean, that's also a great consideration, is like, where are we now? We're in the middle of a pandemic, and government funding has slowed down a lot for anything extra, anything that takes people in the same environment. And so a lot of production is down, and in anything like pandemic or wars or big global events is going to take funding that could be geared towards technological advances and space and all that kind of stuff. That funding is going to go towards whatever the current crisis is, and that slows down progress as well. So in a way, like, our ability to get along as a variety of nations is really crucial for determining whether, the pace that we can advance technologically, unless we're just looking at military. I'm sure wars provide advancement in military technology, but not a lot of that can be transferred to everyday benefit. So
I wanted to bring in one thing. Honestly, I kind of wonder if it might be better if tech addiction was worse. And
if what? What was worse?
If addiction to technology was worse than it is. Because like let's say addiction to technology was like smoking, or like people got addicted and then it was very clear people got cancer. It's very clear this is a real problem. And so then laws are passed, or like there's taxed high, on every label.
Or suicide.
Yeah.
Right.
So like when it's a real problem, then we're like, oh, we really have to do something. We got to pass some regulation. We got to pass some law to help fix it. But tech addiction, it's such a subtle problem, and you don't know when it's really.
More people on antidepressants just means more money for the pharmaceuticals, so everybody wins, right?
Yeah, it's hard to tell when it's really a problem, if it's a problem. It's so subtle that we don't know when to put a regulation in, what to do. But I feel like if it was more severe, then we'd say, okay, we got to do something about it.
It might actually be really severe, but because pharmaceutical companies get so much money that they can get political support, it could be that it's actually very severe, enough to take notice and hush.
I mean, it
Is
is.
that really conspiracy theorist of me?
No, I mean, that's probably true.
No, I think what you're saying is true. I
Hi, Jesse.
don't think it's
That's
true
quite the haircut.
100%
Thank you.
of the time.
What were you
Hey,
saying,
what's up?
David?
I think what you're saying is true, but I'm not persuaded that it's true 100% of the time. And
Hmm.
I wondered if you had any idea, I don't know, what the statistics are.
No, haven't I found? No, I mean, okay, I have heard some statistics talking about the ever increasing rate of suicide, not just in the United States, but in countries that seem like they should be functional, but are technologically advanced. We talked about this a number of sessions ago, where we were talking about like Japan is one of them.
Yeah.
But you know, it's hard to measure all of the factors that are part of that. But at the very least, we know that there are a number of measures that are taken to suppress statistics themselves, and especially reporting negative things. And it's just kind of this widespread practice in both law enforcement and in, like I said, like the drug industry, and just all over the place. People are finding ways to try and not report how bad it is. So it's purely speculation that that is bad. I don't know the actual numbers. I could look them up, but it's hard to put those into perspective. I'm not a statistics analyst, and that would probably take me my entire lifetime to analyze the actual meaning of them. So that's why I'm just like lobbing it out there, just saying, we don't know. It could be very bad. And honestly, we wouldn't know because we can't get the data, because we know that the data is doctored in some areas. We don't know who's doctoring it. We don't know to what extent, but we know it's doctored.
What
That just creates a lot of unknowns.
We don't know who's doctoring it. We don't know what's being doctored, but we know it's doctored.
Right, because you hear of the cases where there are lawsuits, and where we hear about the data comes out later that it had been doctored. So you
Okay.
hear about these things.
Are we talking about like suicide rates in general or drug addiction?
Right, or even like locally, for us, the Minneapolis crime reports, the ones that are for Minneapolis, like the ones that are in the rougher neighborhoods, are often not produced in the end result. So there's actually some like grassroots projects that the people who are like residents listen to scanners and then publicize what they hear officers going towards, and so that there can be some discussion about it, because
Yeah.
it otherwise
They-
doesn't get publicized, it doesn't get recorded. For some reason, they're able to get around it.
And here's the thing. That's why I like the thing with smoking is it hits you, it smacks you right in the face. Like, people smoke, they get lung cancer, they die early. Everyone can see it. It's very clear. The connection is obvious.
It wasn't that obvious so
Yeah,
long ago.
Yeah,
100 years to figure out.
it took years to figure out, but once enough years passed, it was like
It probably
the
took
data.
years to prove. I don't know if it
prove-
took years to figure out, like the lead case, like the lead.
It became a point where the evidence became so overwhelming, or to a point that the correlation between it became so obvious at this point that, we already kind of talked about this with how scientific revolutions work and that everything.
When
where
when
it-
when
It
the
wasn't obvious. Like at first, the people who were saying lead it was bad for you, smoking was bad for you. I mean, they would have been the like.
oh, but
crazy
this commercial
conspiracy
says
theorists,
this,
you know?
but I don't want to
Cell
give too much
phones are gonna
credence.
kill everybody.
I don't want to give too much credence to all conspiracy theories, but there are instances where, you know, someone has evidence that correlates to a thing that they can show. And, you know, somebody usually disregards that evidence, usually on the grounds of a common sense fallacy. Okay. Which is they will say smoking's not bad for you. Everyone knows that, you know, or an appeal to authority or something else. But if someone has immediate evidence, that's about as good as it gets for observational, any observational hypothesis moving forward or anything like that. But yeah, it never, I mean, in regards to suicide rates, police scanners, all these things where we have people potentially hiding data. I don't know. I haven't read any reports. I don't know if people are actually doing it. I feel like we're even seeing this happening a lot with Black Lives Matter and a lot of things with communities where more and more we're becoming the evidence of, you know, systematic racism or people being oppressed by the police is starting to get more and more and more overwhelming until you just see whole communities come to a point where it's like, we can't act as if this is not the case or
Right.
that we can't do it. It's very similar to a scientific revolution, that point where you have a bunch of people where it's like, it is no longer feasible to claim ignorance or deny this. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is very much like the question of lead, because if you don't know, lead was brought about by a scientist, I forget his name, very early on, that it was dangerous to, you know, for people to be around, for consumption or any of that. And it was one of the first major instances in America where you had the corporations hire their own scientists to come out, another notable scientist who came with completely different conclusions and basically said, no, it's safe. I have all these tests and everything. And it's one of those horrible times where you realize science often works. We were talking about how fast technology jumps forward. Well, one of the things is when you are using technology that people have to find intuitive, or they have to start to wrap their own heads around it, start to grasp it, or the evidence to
We
go towards
had
that technology.
electric cars 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They were around.
This like Vladimir was talking about this. I don't know. I heard you say metaphysical, but at this point, this would be more of a problem of, you know, this would be belief for people, you know, to say this is sufficient, you know, to move forward, to say, you know, to grasp the technology as it is intuitive to them, less than. Go ahead. Sorry.
Going back to the kind of like suicide rates, I'm not sure exactly how you guys ended up there, but from what I could,
the
from
cost
what I had heard,
of technology advancement. It was a speculation.
Sure.
It was a speculation.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if that's even speculation. I mean, if Jonathan Haidt talks a lot about this and following, just like, because you can measure. They measured the instances of teenagers and preteens like being reporting to the hospitals for self-harm. I mean, not just like who's admitting to cutting themselves in their bathroom. It's like just the rates of like teenagers having their stomach pumps, needing sutures for cutting themselves, like verifiable data. And it was not like, I mean, it's shocking. I mean, it's exponentially.
Is this the same guy that wrote The Coddling of the American Mind or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's really hard to like conclusively prove that it's technology causing it. And I think a lot of people have, and obviously the tech industry wouldn't like to say that, so they're gonna try to resist conclusions around that. But I mean, to be fair, it is very tough to really conclusively prove that. And that's another thing that makes it so tricky. So yeah, maybe smoking was a little bit harder than I thought, according to what like Frank and Jesse and you have said. Like it wasn't as obvious as I panned it out to be, but it's a little more clear of a relationship than technology versus suicide rates, I guess.
Allow me to give you an idea just how clear it was.
Yeah.
You guys may not remember when the Surgeon General's warning was first put on a pack of cigarettes. You know, smoking might cause lung cancer. There were over 7,000 peer-reviewed papers in journals showing an obvious link between smoking and lung cancer. That I think that the Surgeon General might have figured it out after 6,000 peer-reviewed papers, but it took 7,000. So
by the time they bother to inform the public, they've known for quite some time.
There were people trying to inform the public.
I think of you know, the physical science of, you know, metastasizing cells, you know, that cancer and smoke is very different thing to prove than, you know, like somebody, like ideas that people get in their heads. You know, mental illness is I think a lot more difficult to prove with that, you know, cause correlation, just because it's sort of an abstract idea.
Medically.
But yeah, but I mean, like it's sort of like with like anorexia, like it seemed to be very like it was, at least in our generation, like it was sort of, yeah, like all these magazines and everything you see in the media is feeding this you know, this idea that's mostly affecting young women, making them think they have to stop eating, and everyone was okay with accepting that idea. It made sense. We didn't really do anything about it as a culture, but it was more or less accepted. And I think with social media, it's that same like mental stamp on people, but it's so much more intense that it, yeah.
Guys,
That seems like I'd be curious what kind of studies were done to back up bulimia.
That's a good point. But I think we should probably end it around this time, because we start at 6. So
been at it for a while.
It's been a while, and but yeah, man, thanks for coming, everybody. It was a good conversation. I'm sorry you joined late, Jesse, because Jesse's is a workaholic. He must work a lot.
I don't like to work. These people, they need their houses, their mortgages.
I was one of them. I really needed Jesse to get me a house, so he did it, and I gave him a deadline too. So he does. If you need a house, talk to Jesse. He'll get it done.
Bruno was the most low maintenance client I've ever had in my whole life.
Really?
I don't even think he did anything. His wife just sent all the paperwork, and they bought the first house they looked at, or second, I don't know. But it was It was just a dream.
Yeah. No, that's actually not true. He's just being nice. I mean, that's kind of true, but that's only part of the story. But
I gotta take
but
off.
let's
see
go
y'all
with
later.
Let's go with that one.
Bye. Thanks,
Yeah.
Bruno.
All right. Thanks for coming. It was a good conversation, and I'll see you guys next week for the next episode of Batman.
I'm gonna try to pop in on time next time.
Philosophy
Bye.
Batman. Thank
See
you.
ya.
Vladimir, what time is it in Russia, actually? Is it like 5 o'clock in the morning?
6 a.m.
6 a.m., man. Holy shit, that's some commitment.
I'm gonna have a long sleep now.
All
That
right.
is
Have a
some-
good night. Thanks for
that-
joining.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Michael. That was like that was epic, Vladimir.
Yeah,
Well-
that's great. I'm gonna participate next time as well.
Yeah. All right,
the same
man.
time, the same time, right? So it's 5.
Yeah, we do it. Yeah, we do it. Yeah, we do it at 7. But if you join, man, I mean, we can start earlier. You know, we can like we did this time. We can start at 6.
Yeah, it's better to start earlier.
Yeah, yeah, because if not, it's super late. Yeah.
All
So,
right. So see
uh,
you. Bye. Bye. Bye.
all right. Thank you, Vladimir. Thanks
Thank you.
everybody for listening.